If I could remove all constraints, how would I reinvent education? Don't be constrained by your experience. I wasn't super strong in school, and now I arguably run one of the largest training organizations. I think you need to fail fast, and I did. I failed a lot in the beginning. We made some poor technology decisions. We made some poor hiring decisions. We did a lot of things along the way that we learned from.
Today, I'm sitting down with Maureen Lonergan, VP of Amazon's Web Services Training and Certification. Maureen has been in the education space since the mid-90s. During that time, she's made it her mission to remove barriers to education. From teaching in Mozambique to leading the world's largest cloud computing training program, she's democratizing access for learners around the globe. During our conversation, we'll explore scaling learning, unlocking human potential, and why education is the great equalizer, and how Maureen and her team are helping millions of people develop the skills they need to be prepared for the future of work. Let's dive in. What I understand is in 2012, you started this team with 4 people and a dog.
It's a true story.
And now by 2025, 29 million people will benefit from free education to grow their cloud computing skills. How did you go from that to where we are today?
It's been a journey. You know, when I joined AWS in 2012, it was a very small team, and we were creating the sales teams and the professional services teams. And then when I came into the organization at Amazon, they really challenged me. We have a very formal operational planning process. But what it did force me to do is take a step back and think about, with all the opportunity, with the big tech skills gap, with the technology that AWS had, if I could remove all constraints, how would I reinvent education? Like, what does that landscape look like? And so it was baby steps in the beginning. We committed to 29 million people trained for free from 2020 to 2025.
Yes.
And we're well on our way, which is super exciting.
In most cases in our industry, you don't see high alignment between the strategy from a learning perspective and the business strategy. So I imagine it was probably super magical in a sense, because you were being asked to sit at the table as a business leader.
Yes.
Not a learning person.
Yes. I think that's the thing that I talk to C-level executives across the globe, and I think the conversation has changed. I don't think it's changed fast enough.
Agreed, yeah.
Right? We're all out there, and we're all trying to innovate on behalf of our customers, and we're trying to recruit talent, and we're trying to develop talent, but it needs to be a board level strategy. And a lot of companies it is.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of companies that don't view it that way. We've done a lot of work in that area with companies and have learned a lot.
Okay.
And we're trying to share those best practices around how do you create a culture of learning? How do you build learning into the job? How do you ensure that you're sharing what the company objectives are and aligning it to your talent strategy?
I'd love to hear from your perspective, the journey, because you've been in this game since the mid-90s.
Yeah.
How have you seen the industry evolve?
I think learning's transformed totally. During COVID especially, I think that was the biggest transformation for us as an organization. We had a lot of instructor-led training. We were certainly going down this digital path. We had certifications that were proctored in person, and we had to take a step back very rapidly and say, you saw companies completely transformed during COVID, but how do you get the training and the technology out to those companies? We remotely said, what are the top 3 things we're going to do? We're going to make sure that we can deliver instructor-led training online to the commitments that we had for our customers. Yep. We're going to accelerate our platform development for training. We're going to also innovate. And what does that learning look like remotely? Because it's not enough to just provide digital, videos like that. Certainly it's helpful, but it's this experiential learning. Like, how are we going to build a labs platform? How do we get our customers into the console? Right. Oh, and then you have, new generations coming in, and they like YouTube and gaming and all the things. Like, what does that look like? So then we took a step back and said, okay, let's identify all these personas, these roles, and then how do we redesign learning and then scale it? Yeah. And we have totally transformed.
Things that I'm hearing about the impacts of your program are pretty incredible. 90% of people see a positive ROI.
Yes.
You've got over 80% of people feeling that they have more job security after they've taken your programs.
Yes.
And keeping that standard and that bar and doing it for more and more people will be hard for sure.
Yeah, but I think if you listen to your customers, I think if you really figure out what learners want and how they're consuming your content, and we do a lot of those sessions like voice of the customer, grab feedback, or innovate, and we have a lot of talent. We embrace that talent and we encourage them to think differently about learning, and because of that we have some super cool things coming out over the next year that are based on new technologies coming out in the industry.
If you could go back in time to 2012, Maureen.
Yes.
Because there's other folks right now who are starting out. You got a big vision. It's not clear how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
What advice do you have?
Don't be constrained by your experience. I think you have to be open to feedback. I think you need to embrace it. I think you need to fail fast, and I did. I failed a lot in the beginning. We made some poor technology decisions. We made some poor hiring decisions. We did a lot of things along the way that we learned from. But I think reflecting, being super thoughtful about what are your goals and objectives and what's going to get you there. Confidence definitely helps, and that's hard. I think you're in the room. Sometimes you're the only female in the room, but I think that Amazon's culture of providing feedback and leveling the playing field is good. And in the beginning, I'm not saying it was easy in the beginning. It was hard. I was in the room with like very strong engineering leaders and leaders of the company, and you're like, oh my goodness, but if you take feedback as a gift, I think you're gonna, I wish I would have got that earlier in my career. I really wish, I had a very successful career until I got to Amazon. Probably too successful if I'm really honest.
Okay.
I don't know if I had the right achievements for the level that I was at. And then when I came to Amazon, I was like, ooh, I gotta reset, reframe, be open to feedback, kind of drive forward. You have to be prepared for the feedback. It's not all ideas are
good ideas.
Good ideas.
Yeah.
I can give you an example. Well, early on, maybe 5 years ago, I went to the executive team with this idea that I wanted to disrupt education. And I asked it was a bold and think big. Think big is one of our leadership principles. Bold idea. It was an enormous financial ask. And the response that I got was, good idea, but you need to rethink it. And it took us 2 or 3 years to get back to that idea, but we pulled it together in a scrappier way. It's probably a tenth of the cost of what it was originally going to cost. But what I would say is that technology helped, right? There was a lot that came into play with us being able to launch the Cloud Institute. We didn't end up having as many resources as we thought, but we pulled the team together and we still launched it.
Well, and sometimes, it has been said, and I may butcher the quote, but true innovation comes from constraint.
Yes, 100%. And I actually think it's funny, under constraints, you know, when you're rich with resources, it's a luxury, but it's also a burden. Mm-hmm. And I would say, if I really look back on the last 12 years, I think some of the strongest innovation came from not having resources. And I think some of the constraints that have happened over the last couple of months are great.
I want to shift a little bit into talking about the future. So what needs to be true to democratize access to education?
Accessibility, 100%. Making sure that the stuff that you're building can be consumed by as many people as possible. Then there's technology, right? What is the platform that you're going to make this accessible? Mm-hmm. How do you make it 24/7 accessible? How do you make it free? You know, I lived in Africa. I lived in a hut and no electricity, and I taught school 15, 16 years ago, and it really helped to inform how I actually think about education today, because I was thinking, oh my God, I'm teaching these kids, and we were lucky because in the village we were in, they had Wi-Fi in the trees, literally in the trees, and some people had devices. And so when I came back from Africa, I thought, God, I need to really think about not just what we do here in the United States, but how do you design everything you do to be accessible? So technology is one thing. The second thing, we've built Restart as a program, which is partnering with organizations all over the globe that are in their communities, and they bring students to us. They could be someone working in a fast food restaurant, someone who's an admin, someone who just has come out of high school. Yeah. How do we provide education to them? So we have a very formal program. We work with these partnerships. We train them. We return them to the partnering organization. They work in the community and they work to get them interviews and jobs. So that's another way that you can do it. Cloud Institute is the newest one. Like, how do you disrupt education? Or how do you take all those really interesting kids that have an interest in technology? How do you get them involved? And so the Cloud Institute was a way for us to say, okay, we're going to lower the cost barrier and we'll continue to drive that cost down. But how do we get people into that program that want to transform? We also, right across the street, have the Skills Center, which is an amazing place where we have demonstrations of robotics, sports data, our Alexa devices. We take the data there. We invite anybody that wants to come into that center and get training for free every single day. We do it there. We do it in South Africa. We have a skills center in DC, and we'll continue to expand those programs. So I don't think this is no silver bullet. I think it's also partnering with companies that are willing to take take a chance, right? Because we have a lot of organizations that we work with through partnering organizations or companies that are willing to take entry-level talent. And like, we see amazing things happen with these kids that come in that didn't have the career that they thought they might have, that come in from a different perspective and build more innovative products. It's so important.
Well, they say diversity is the strength. I also hear you talking a little bit about, the network of players that you need to close a skills gap. If 6 out of 10 people need to be retrained in the next 5 years, and a very small percentage of them actually have access to training, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
So it sounds like part of the success has also been the relationship between traditional academia, government, grassroots organizations, bringing the people to the programs and vice versa. How did you start those conversations?
Yeah, we've had great conversations with organizations. We just did something in Saudi Arabia where we're training a lot of women. Where I was in Jakarta 3 weeks ago. Okay. Where I walked into, my team down there is really working to figure out how do you work with people with disabilities. I went into a classroom that had deaf and blind children that were building web applications. I went into another classroom where they had teachers that were being reskilled, that didn't have access to computers. I was there with the education ministry talking about Jakarta's making these massive investments in their infrastructure, in the way that they want to skill their workforce for the future. And there's governments all over the world doing this. It's just trying to figure out how do you provide the right types of programs.
That's right.
There. But I think it's also a partnership with companies that are willing to. It's not enough to train people. No, you have to work really hard with your customers and with partners in the industry to say, like, hey, we're going to build this talent. And
I'm thinking of those C-suite executives who traditionally thought of this as an expense in their line item.
Yeah.
And now a bit of a rude awakening that we are a bit behind the 8 ball and need to start building these skills intentionally and partnering with organizations to make sure we've got the right talent pipeline. I think they say from 2011 to 2022, there was a 33% decline in bench strength.
Yes. I think it's interesting because I think, training has always been seen as kind of a company tax, I think, which it's interesting, right? It's like, wait a minute, that's your talent. That's who's going to build your product. That's who's going to make you more innovative. Right. I think the biggest challenge that we have just across the industry is working with these executive teams to really help them think through their talent strategy and how are they going to invest so that it aligns to their goals. And I think it's historically been an afterthought, but I think these companies that create plans aligned to their goals and have this, create learning communities, I think are going to be the most successful.
So when you think of AWS's position, what should other companies and other stakeholders be doing so that academia, government, private sector can work better together to solve?
It's interesting because we've learned a lot in the last 12 years. Like, you would think, especially when you're recruiting tech talent, like, they want to work for the coolest companies, but that's actually not true. People want to be invested in and they want to continue to grow their technologies. This is what we've learned from our strongest customers, that, you need to create a learning needs analysis. You need to have a sponsor at the executive level for talent. You need to build out a learning plan. It needs to be tied to your goals and objectives. You need to allow people time to train. And then, by the way, you need to work with your communities. And what universities do you recruit out of? Because we have a really extensive academy program. And then what a lot of these companies are also looking at, how can they help from a community perspective, and like making sure we have partnerships. It's a complex network, but I think that we've done a great job, I think, of building out a framework on how companies should think about it. It's really like, how do you take this framework and apply it to what your goals and objectives are as an organization, and how can we help you be successful?
You were right. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of complexity. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier related to like an individual's experience in a career. And when I think about your career journey and all of the cool experiences you had, you made a very intentional choice prior to joining Amazon to step away.
Yes.
Tell me about what drove that.
It was a very stressful time in my life. So that was, I took a step back and decided, like, I'm going to take a gap year, and I went to Latin America. And then the second one was a different circumstance in Africa. But when I think about the choices that I made, it was really about being very curious about cultures and wanting to learn more. I think that when I retire, I will spend my life traveling the world. Like, I love that. Like, I love meeting new people. I love trying different dishes. I love new languages. I love all of that. But I think it helps to inform how you live your life. I always say, like, I think I'm more of a global citizen, and I want to be that. I mean, I think we could all benefit from being that way in our lives.
Would you say that those experiences helped shape your perspective, or at least think about removing those barriers from education?
100%. So I think it doesn't matter whether you're in Africa or you're in India or you're in a meeting, be open. Yeah, be aware.
We started this interview with, like, we are by nature a product of our lived experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And getting exposure to the experiences of others is the only way that you can design learning that's truly accessible. And I agree, that's agnostic to where you are in the world. It sounds like this ability to have a local focus with a global view has been one of the secrets of success in the programs AWS runs.
Like, I think we're scratching the surface of what we can do. And it has been a gift working for Amazon. I think they have given us the ability to take the technology, and they've made the right investments, in my opinion. They trust their teams, but we're just scratching the surface. I mean, it's just the 29 million. It's not enough.
It's not enough.
No.
And honestly, when I was learning more about some of the humans that have benefited, folks that lost their jobs through the pandemic, that were in the hospitality industry, never imagined working in the computer space. And it's totally unlocked opportunities.
Yeah. We have people in those roles working for companies like Accenture, you know what I mean? Like, and we need to do more of that. Like, we have the opportunity to transform lives. We have, actually, like, collectively as a country or the globe, to transform economies. Like, we need to look at where the skills are coming from in the future. We're certainly making really big investments in India and sub-Saharan Africa, and we're going to continue to do that. But it takes a village. It's not just one team at Amazon. It's us, it's our partners, it's our customers. And the great news is, like, when we have these conversations with our partners and customers, they're like, yeah, how can I help? And I think that opening the conversation is the most important part. You never know. And I'm telling you, I travel all over the globe talking to governments, industries, education ministries. It's like, sometimes it's one little conversation. I talked to an organization in Jakarta, and they were like, oh, we have something in Nigeria. And so it's connecting the dots.
One of the things I think people watching may want to hear is advice if you are just starting out your career.
I think remove the barriers that you think that you have. Let's just take tech, for example. I wasn't super strong in school. Like, I'm going to be really honest, it just wasn't, right? Yeah. I landed a job. I did work really hard. I had a very good work ethic, and I kind of learned along the way. I don't know that traditional education was the best thing for me. I didn't go to the best college. I didn't approach it that way. However, that experience for me has, and I've seen it in our skill centers, in the Restart program, and people just coming in, Cloud Institute, all the programs that we're putting together, people are, we say, just remove the fear. Like, we don't care if you have a tech background, just try it. See what you like. What industry are you interested in? You might be interested in sports. You might be interested in, F1's huge right now, right? That's a huge data play. Like, how do you inspire those kids? And I think, like, really having those conversations with those kids and kind of removing, like, I can't do this, or I'm not that smart, or I didn't understand math, or,
Yeah.
like, I think that's the biggest thing. And it doesn't matter, even if you don't want to go into tech, there's a lot of things.
I hear you saying a couple things. Confidence.
Yes.
Vulnerability that's required to learn stuff. So get comfortable making mistakes.
Yes.
Don't worry about where you're ending up. Just take the one step at a time, and that will be your superpower to get you to where you're going. The other thing I think you mentioned is it doesn't have to be tech. Like, just think about how opportunities can apply to your life.
I am the biggest example of that. I mean, I say this to people all the time. Like, I started out as a training coordinator in a software company. And now I arguably run one of the largest tech organizations, training through all of our partnerships and us and our company and our digital platform.
Wow.
I mean, I think it is a gift every day to come to work and really rethink and help people in their lives. But that might not be your thing. Like, it could be anything. And AI, certainly, like, it's just going to change everything, like every single job. So I think that's our big push right now, is like, how do we get that out to anybody? Like, how do we help them understand what the tech is? How do we help them understand what coding looks like for the future?
Yeah.
Because people that didn't code in Python before were fearful it's going to open the doors, with prompt engineering. And there's so many things that can happen there. So
the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, they are.
We just have to prime the people to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's a village though, right? It's like all of us, your organization, my organization, the people that we work with, bringing people along. We need thought leaders in this space, and we need mentors out in the industry. We need to embrace people that don't have access to education. It's all of that.
It's a huge ecosystem. And tell more stories, because the more stories we can tell about the impact, the more people will believe it's possible for them, the more willing they're able to engage. And I'm excited to be able to maybe have this conversation in 2025 or beyond, to just see the continued great work that your team is doing.
We've got a lot of really big plans this year, and we're very, very excited. We're going to continue to work kind of across the globe. And so imagine what we can do in the future, right, collectively.
Oh my goodness, the sky is truly the limit.
Yeah.
But then there'll be another problem we can solve.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Maureen, it was a pleasure chatting with you today.
Really nice
I'm
to
really
meet you.
excited to hear more about all the awesome things that are going on. You're right. They are not easy problems ahead, but I agree, together we can solve them.
Yeah, I agree. Join us.